So Ted Bundy was a monster who terrorized, well, America, right? Everybody thinks that Ted was this wonderful guy. And I see so many girls say, oh, I would date Ted Bundy. And the sad thing is that it's true. If you look at the trials when Ted was in Florida, they were flooded with girls from across the country, okay? They came to watch their boo, Ted Bundy, be tried for murder. And they said, no, he's so sweet. He's innocent. Doesn't look like he's capable of doing it. These women were so stupid. And that's what made them easy victims, okay? That is how Ted Bundy murdered at least 30 women, because these women were just acceptable to his charm. And no, I'm not saying that what he did was right. I'm not condoning murder. I'm not a monster. But these women made it so freaking easy. Like I said, they flooded the courtrooms. And if you watch the interviews, again, watch the interviews of him in trial, and they were saying, oh, he's so innocent. He's so handsome. He's on trial for murder, you idiot. But Ted Bundy was so successful in finding his victims because he was this psychology major at University of Washington, right? He lived in the University District. He was very charming. He was very well dressed. He'd always wear expensive looking clothes. He had a nice watch on, nice shoes, right? And he was very nonchalant. He was very suave. He was very put together. And then he went into law school, right? He was well educated. So, of course, a woman would be very apt to trust him, right? Because when Ted Bundy started murdering, it was around the same time as BTK, as Son of Sam, John Wayne Gacy, right? The 70s, the 60s were really popular for killers all over America. But we didn't really have this conception of serial killers yet, right? Anybody who had killed one person, they basically call it a mass murder or a sequence murder. The term serial killer wasn't coined until in the 80s, actually. I think his name was Robert Ressler, right? So you also got to understand the society that Ted was killing in, okay? It's not like today where you don't trust your neighbor, you lock everything up, you don't trust anybody, right? This was the 70s to 80s. The 70s, that was when discotheques were popping off. Everybody's going to a club, going dancing. You didn't think that you were going to get murdered, right? Like for Son of Sam, you didn't think you were going to just go to a discotheque, come home, and then somebody's going to walk up to your car and shoot you blank, right? You're not thinking that you're in danger of being a victim to a serial killer. So I give that to them in that instance, yeah, that they weren't really suspecting anybody. But one other thing that helped Ted Bundy become so successful was that this is when the feminist movement was rising up, right? Women deserve power, women deserve rights, all that bull crap. And so women started to hitchhike. Women were a lot freer with their ambitions. They were sleeping with random guys. They were hooking up like giving candy to a baby. They just didn't care. It was the new norm. It was accepted, right? You did pot, you got drunk, you went to parties, you hooked up. Women didn't have any morals anymore. Well, there were still a few, but for the most part, like 80% of it was just women's lib, right? We want to vote, we want to party, we don't want to be a housewife anymore. And that helped Ted become very successful in his picking up victims, right? And Ted started out as basically a stalker, watching girls through their windows, getting undressed, and then eventually stalking them and kidnapping them. He would pretend to be a police officer. In the case of Carol Durant, he pretended to be a police officer and said, hey, ma'am, your car was about to be stolen, but we apprehended the guy, we got him caught. Would you mind coming out to your car and checking to see if anything was stolen? So of course she's like, yeah, I'll come check out the car. And she leans in and there's nothing there. He's like, well, gets her leaning in a little bit more. She's like, no, there's nothing here. So then he says, would you mind coming down to the police station filling out a report, just basically seeing things missing, whatnot. And then she gets a little suspicious, like, that spidey sense is going off. And so she asking for an ID, a police badge. And then he shows her one. Obviously, it was fake, right? But he convinces her to get in his car, which is a VW Bug. And then they get to a secluded part of town. I believe it was a school parking lot. And he gets a handcuff on one of the wrists. And he says, "I'm going to kill you." Yeah. Somehow she manages to get away from him and get into a car just happened to be driving by and reports him to the police. Now, of course, he's not caught for a good bit later, but this was sort of the beginning of Ted, right? This is kind of when his name starts to pop up in investigations, when they start to notice him, they know his name, they start investigating his life. They end up clearing him until his fiance, lover, basically digs a nail deeper in the coffin and really seals the deal for him to be arrested. But it was basically very easy for Ted to pick up girls. It was the 70s, nobody was suspicious, women's rights were rising, hitchhiking, free, all kind of crap. So it was very easy for him to get at least 30 women that he confessed to. And that is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're watching out for the next video. Stay true to yourself, stay true to crime, and God bless you. I'll see you next one.